unto us. Maybe then we'll begin to live under God, and in God not gold we'll trust. Well, we'll become a lady liberty in the coming years. Will her light be burning bright or be extinguished by the tears of those whose lives are torn apart, but those too blind to see that the words that follow under God are the words that can make us free. Somewhere, someplace, somehow seems we've lost our American way to pursuing liberty and justice for all. So while I can, I have to say for any patriotic, all-American, woman, child, or man, no flag should ever be more important than the rights for which it stands. Oh, we'll come a lady liberty in the coming years. Will her light be burning bright or be extinguished by the tears of those whose lives are torn apart, but those too blind to see that the words that follow under God are the words that can make us free. I say the words that follow under God are the words that can make us free.
With liberty and justice for all.
Listen to how this textbook describes slavery.
The master often had a barbecue or a picnic for his slaves. Then they had a great frolic. Even while working in the cotton fields, they sang songs. The beat of the music and the richness of their voices made work seem light.
Yikes, that's from History of Georgia, a textbook published in 1954 that was taught across junior high schools in Georgia for decades. That sort of language is part of an intellectual movement called the Lost Cause, a distorted version of American Civil War history that's been prevalent in the South for a long time. It took shape soon after the defeat of the Confederate States in the war, when Southern historians like Edward Pollard and former Confederate General Jubal Early started preserving the South's perspective through their writings. They framed the Confederate cause as a heroic defense of the Southern way of life against the overwhelming forces in the North. That narrative has a few basic tenets: the glorification of Confederate soldiers who died for a cause they believed in, the belief that slavery was a benevolent institution, and maybe most importantly, that slavery was not the root cause of the war. The Lost Cause is one of the most notoriously effective efforts to rewrite history, and it was done by the losing side. So how did it become so deeply rooted in Southern memory? Blame the United Daughters of the Confederacy. The UDC was founded in Nashville in 1894 to preserve Confederate culture for generations to come. The women who made up the group descended from elite antebellum families, and they used their social and political clout to spread the pro-Southern version of the war as real history. You've probably seen their efforts to honor the Confederacy, but maybe you didn't know it was the UDC. They're the ones who covered the Southern landscape with memorials for Confederate leaders and soldiers. They used their fundraising and lobbying skills to pressure local governments into erecting monuments in prominent public spaces like courthouses and state capitals.
Installed here next to the state capitol by the United Daughters of the Confederacy.
The United Daughters of the Confederacy donated this memorial to the city back in the 30s.
They put them along roadsides and in parks. Any place that was remotely relevant to the Confederacy was memorialized. By the early 20th century, the UDC had 100,000 members and chapters spread all over the country, but mostly in former Confederate states. And there's a reason they grew so quickly during that time.
So we're talking about roughly 3 decades after the end of the war, and the Confederate veterans themselves are beginning to die off. So there is this push to find ways to commemorate it, because the big challenge by 1900 was there's a new generation of white Southerners being born, and they never experienced the war years.
That push is visible. Most of the Confederate monuments were erected during the UDC's height of influence.
There's a rhetoric around monuments that we want to get this thing built before all of that generation has died off, and And the reason we want it is to teach future generations about those men.
Dr. Karen Cox wrote the book on the UDC, and I asked her if it was fair to say the group established the lost cause as historical fact in the South.
Oh my God, yeah. They were the leaders of the lost cause into the 20th century, and they made it a movement about vindication.
Just to give you an idea of how effective they were, they successfully lobbied for a Confederate memorial in Arlington National Cemetery, which U.S. President Woodrow Wilson proudly unveiled to a cheering crowd. Now that's influence, right?
Monuments are the least of what they did.
What?
I mean, they are the most visible and tangible, but the work with children was far more influential.
It turns out a central UDC objective is shaping how children think about the war and their Southern heritage. One of their most powerful tools? Textbooks. Take a look at this pamphlet called A Measuring Rod for Textbooks. It was written by the illustrious Southern historian Miss Mildred Rutherford, an educator, orator, and author of Southern history textbooks. She's also very pro-slavery. The pamphlet announced the formation of a textbook review committee featuring prominent Southerners like 5 former Confederate generals. This group was committed to spreading the truths of Confederate history, so they instructed school boards to reject any textbooks that did not accord full justice to the South. And they urged libraries to deface every book in their collection that didn't measure up by writing the words "unjust to the South" clearly on its cover. This pamphlet was shared widely with school boards throughout the South, and UDC-backed committees closely monitored history books to make sure Northern influence never reached classrooms. So the core language of an approved textbook aligned precisely with that of the lost cause. You know, stuff like,
"The Confederacy lost in the war between the states, but Georgia never forgot to honor her Confederate soldiers."
History of Georgia was on the UDC's approved list. It was also written by E. Merton Coulter, a self-described Southern historian and historian-described white supremacist.
They understand that how you educate, who wins the writing game, who wins the battle over history, ultimately wins the war. That's the big fight for the UDC.
But their work with children went further than the classrooms. The UDC formed an auxiliary group called the Children of the Confederacy, which was designed to get kids born in former Confederate states to actively participate in their version of history. Group leaders had kids recite call and response truths from something called the Confederate Catechism. Children up to the age of 18 would compete and be rewarded for memorizing long passages of lost cause rhetoric.
So it would be like an after-school thing, like that was your club. You would go after school to the meeting of the Children of the Confederacy, and your leader might teach you songs of the South like Dixie or other songs that were considered Southern patriotic songs. They would have them write essays, go visit the veterans, and learn this catechism.
Children were also the centerpiece of their community's monument unveilings, like this living flag at the dedication of the Stonewall Jackson Monument in Richmond. Yes, those are school children. The UDC's efforts shaped the identities of children who grew up with the lost cause. They made history personal, and that made their story last longer.
Generations of children learning that narrative in a variety of ways grow up to be, segregationist in the 50s and 60s, because that's been drilled into them since they were children.
After World War I, the UDC started losing steam, but the damage was done. The monuments were in place, and the textbooks they wrote remained in Southern classrooms until the late 70s. And the women's group did it all without the right to vote or participate in politics.
You can still get glimmers of this lost cause memory of the war from people who will always choose to see it through the personal. And I think the UDC, to a great extent, was their goal.
So the next time someone says the Confederate monuments are about remembering our history, just know that that's exactly what the United Daughters of the Confederacy wants you to think.
That was fascinating. Yes, the United Daughters of the Confederacy is good information to have at this point, especially with what's going on in Richmond. Good afternoon. This is J Tub here with you. We're starting Citizen Voices radio show for June 28th. June 28th, 2020. You're listening to WRWK 93.9 FM, based in Midlothian, Virginia, and serving Chesterfield County, Richmond, and the surrounding area, and online everywhere at TheWorkFM.org. And Facebook live streaming. We are Facebook live streaming. Good afternoon. This is Citizen Voices Radio for June 28th, 2020. J Tub, your host here. We were just listening to a piece on the United Daughters of the Confederacy, which is really pertinent to what's going on today with Black Lives Matter and the effort to take down the Confederate statues, which the UDC sponsored and put up on Monument Avenue. So by any means, we have a really good show planned for you today. Those of you who follow my Facebook page group, Citizen Voices Radio Show on Facebook, may have seen some of the stories I've posted about Pennsylvania. And that is, of course, we have pipelines here in Virginia, which is something I've focused on big time. But the fracking and the pipelines in Pennsylvania are far worse than they are here in Virginia. They have pipelines going through residential neighborhoods by children's schools and libraries, playgrounds. And my friend PK Ditty is going to be joining us in just a minute to talk about events up there with the Mariner East. And later on in the show, we'll touch on some of this with PK, but Craig Stevens and Ray Kemble will be joining us at 3 to talk about the criminal charges that the Attorney General of Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro, has announced against Cabot Oil, which is the company that is doing fracking and has ruined many people's water in Pennsylvania. You may have seen videos of people being able to light their tap water on fire because of the methane that has leaked into the groundwater. That is in Pennsylvania, and both Craig and Ray have homes in Dimock, Pennsylvania. They've been fighting pipelines and fracking for quite a while, and they'll have some commentary on this and the upcoming trial of Cabot Oil, which is a corporation that they're charging with criminal charges, which unfortunately that usually means that nobody goes to jail for the destruction of people's water and the environment. And people have died. Many people have died. There's cancer clusters, a real mess. And hopefully the outcome of that trial will have some impact here in Virginia, because the Attorney General of Pennsylvania is holding their Department of Environmental Protection, which is their state agency charged with ensuring the safety of the environment, very much like the DEQ here in Virginia, which is the Department of Environmental Quality. Same kind of agency, different names slightly, but those agencies have been not doing their job of protecting people and the environment. They've been basically doing what the fossil fuel industry wants, which is to make profit by extracting. They're petrocolonizers, as a friend of mine says. It's really bad when your property gets taken away by eminent domain by a company that wants to put a pipeline through it to sell, but most of it's for export. Certainly the ones here in Virginia, the Mountain Valley Pipeline, which is under construction, blocked by the Yellowfinch tree sit, and the Atlantic Coast Pipeline, which is still stalled, are both designed to take gas that's been fracked in West Virginia, in this case, and send it to a port to export around the world. But there's been sort of a gold rush for fracked gas, and there's an overproduction. So the environmental impact of that is horrific. Putting methane into the air is far more a greenhouse gas than the carbon, like burning coal and oil have been. And that's we don't need that. That's really causing a whole host of problems. I mean, especially during a pandemic, we don't need something else like crazy weather, which we have been having, impacting us. And at the end of the show, I got a little off there. But so Ray Kemble and Craig Stevens are coming on at 3. At 3:30, Vera Scroggins, who is a renowned environmentalist, water protector, and fighter against the fracking in Pennsylvania. She'll be joining us at 3:30 to comment on these issues going on in Pennsylvania. And then we'll wrap up the show with Craig and Ray will be on at the same time with Vera, so they'll have a dialogue. It should be very illuminative, trying to pass the word on. And if you've been following the events on Monument Avenue here in Richmond, the crackdown by the police on protesters who have been peaceful, pretty much all of them. I mean, there's a few people who take advantage of it to create havoc and destruction, but not much by any means. There's been tear gas on Monument Avenue. It seems like for the last week, if you include the Richmond Police Headquarters on Gray Street, which the protesters showed up at and were shot with rubber bullets and pepper sprayed and tear gassed. They weren't doing anything violent. They were just being loud and protesting police brutality, ironically. Anyway, I think I'm going to be talking about that next week. So stay tuned. I'll probably put together something out there. It's big time for everything: civil rights, environmental rights. Environmental racism crosses into both spheres that are at the forefront right now. And let me see. Okay. All right. My friend needs the phone number. PK. All right. Queuing her to call. And nice warm weather outside, clear skies. We had so much rain last week. And yeah. It's a good day. Here we go. Hello, is this PK?
Hey.
Hey there.
Can you hear me good?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Fantastic.
Where are you?
I'm in Chester County, Pennsylvania. I'm sitting outside enjoying the weather.
Yeah, sunny day there too?
Yes, it is. Quite hot, humid.
Yeah. Well, it's almost July, isn't it? So it's appropriate.
That's true.
Yeah. So as our listeners who have been following the show know, you've been on before a few times, and you are basically a citizen watchdog.
That's correct. Community watchdog, yeah.
Yeah, how did you get involved with that to begin with?
Interestingly, I started out as I'm a retired chemist. I did field testing, so I kind of understood documenting how important it is, following like a pretty rigid procedure just to like prove that something is what it is in our world.
Right.
To do that. And I, came here in Chester County. I actually started watching, Standing Rock and Dapple fighting for indigenous rights. And it led to finding pipelines in my own area, which then I realized people are having water problems. And as a chemist, I could help them with the water issues and started realizing that we have no recourse here because of the way the system is set up. And these people would have no water, as we see in Dimmock.
Yep.
People without water, and it was directly due to them installing what we call the Mariner East pipeline, and that's the construction aspect. So they were losing the water.
Well, the water in Dimmock was directly affected by fracking. Is that right?
Right. Yes, and so they're using the same technology to drill. It's called horizontal directional drilling, which is it was developed in the fracking world. I believe, I could be wrong on that, but it is the same. It's just not as deep. They're just drilling the pipe in underneath of us in a population dense area, and they're penetrating aquifers and groundwater, and they have an industrial waste that
Right.
they use as the drilling. So, yeah,
Yeah,
like
so
fracking
the
absolutely was destroyed by the process of fracking.
So basically, the fracking process, if I'm right, is drilling down vertically and then going sideways horizontally into the Marcellus Shale.
Exactly, way down, like a mile down.
So
and they can go very far over.
And that the shale deposits are often below aquifers.
That's true.
So.
Their casings fail.
Well, and the casing, and also they crack the rock to get the gas out.
Hence fracturing.
yeah, it's like, and they can't tell where the gas is going to escape from.
No, they can't. They act like they do. They know, which is all theoretical, as we know. And
yeah.
So yeah. So I mean, so you get I heard you talking about our Department of Environmental Protection, right? It's one of our big issues here this week. In fact, the Better Path Coalition, another coalition I'm with, we just called for the resignation of Mr. McDonald, who is the secretary for the Department of Environmental Protection. We did this, and we called for the resignation of Dr. Levine of the Department of Health after, Attorney General Josh Shapiro made his announcement, mainly because he clearly said that the Department of Environmental Protection, for example, was complicit. I mean, it didn't help anybody, and that's what we're seeing here. It's the same pattern. And so I came out here to start taking pictures to give people evidence, or just from ourselves, our community, to let people know what's really going on. And I started recognizing that every time I go on there and take pictures, they start putting tents and walls and hiding. And they have security always on me. Like, there's a file that the security people have on me.
So they're doing that specifically for you because you've been documenting their activity.
Right, there is I see an actual behavioral reaction to me being present. They've actually gotten in their trucks and stopped working on the drill rig and just stared at me. So I don't understand. I mean, the behavior is odd, so of course I'm going to follow through with that. If they're hiding something, I'm going to find it. And, even as simple as COVID, wearing their masks. As soon as we roll up, they put their masks on. They stop doing like the things they probably aren't supposed to be doing, like OSHA violations maybe. And so, sometimes we sneak up on them and they don't know we're there. But other times they like to be seen because I'm protecting the water. And I don't want them to screw the water up and then have to yell about it later. I would rather them not do that.
So how successful has your watchdog activity been in documenting? I mean, what have you been able to document that are violations?
Oh gosh, just as you guys know in the MVP, just simple soil erosion and sediment controls, which is one of the permits that you simple every time it rains. It's like they fail, then they get into the waterways of Pennsylvania, which is a violation of the Clean Water Act. And that's probably our most, frequent one. We've also captured them in lies pretty much with sinkholes. They've created sinkholes, just documenting day after day. You can see a pattern. And they tell us these things, but the patterns we documented do not match what they're saying. So, and by the way, when you're always taking a picture, I tell people in a training for watchdog, I'm like, always take a picture, because you never know what you're going to catch. It's intuitive. Just take a picture. And I've gotten pictures, looked back 3 years ago, and realized that I had pictures of them already rerouting the Franken pipe before there was any sinkholes, and we thought it was because of sinkholes. So they had prepared these reroutes way before. They had knowledge that they were going to screw up.
So for those of you unfamiliar with some of the terminology, you are referring to Franken pipe. What is that?
Okay, so we have the Mariner 2, which is supposed to be installed as a 20-inch pipe, 350 miles long across Pennsylvania. And it's 20 inches. The second was the Mariner 2X. That's a 16-inch. And when they encountered problems in our area with our geology, our hydrology, they ended up using an old 12-inch, 80-year-old pipe to reroute around the problematic areas and attach it to the 20-inch. And they also did that with a part of the 16-inch. So we've got like a 20-inch, 16-inch, 12-inch cobbled together Franken pipe. And they're telling their investors that they've completed the Mariner 2. There is no Mariner 2 by their own definition. So we've called it Franken pipe.
Right. So it's basically a patched together network, which includes some older pipe, which is problematic in that it may be more prone to leaks.
Absolutely. These pipes that are 80 years old were designed for liquids that were not under high pressure. And they're actually they're going in a different direction. They're reverse flow.
Yeah. Have there been any documented leaks?
Yes. Yes, they actually were fined for a leak in Berks County, Morgantown. There's been one in near Philadelphia area. I can't remember the name. There's been several leaks, Jay, on these older pipes. And so many of them. Like, it's unbelievable. In fact, one of the places in Delaware County they're drilling through, they had a previous leak on one of their old pipes. They drilled through the plume, the contamination plume in the ground, and carried that contamination into aquifers. And a friend of ours, Erica Tarr, her aquifer was destroyed, and they found MTBE, which is an additive in fuel. Only came from them, and so they actually migrated their own plume by drilling through it and put it right into people's water. So
they're really not too careful about the environment.
Nope, and they're not careful at all. In fact, our governor, Governor Tom Wolf, is being investigated by the FBI, and as well several investors are suing in class action suits because he did, the investigation is about him pushing the permits, environmental permits through too soon without doing the geophysical studies or testing in a very, very dynamic geology. And, well, that kind of came back to them.
So what's the problematic geology that you have up there that they've been drilling through?
So you're in Appalachia as well. So you know that we're an older, not fractured, folded, faulted area. It's a very unique. We have several different types of bedrock that meet each other. So there's a lot of fractures and fissures. We also have a lot of springs, underground springs that are like dynamic seasonally. They change all the time. And then the kicker, which everybody knows, is we have karst. We have a large karst belt. Karst is limestone, and it is prone to sinkholes. So
right, because there's a lot of limestone caves because the water erosion, I guess, causes that over many years. But
this area is very knows it. They have to fix roads all the time. When they put a mall in, they literally could drive a truck into one of the caves and had to fill it out to stabilize the ground underneath. They're going right through that. They didn't do their geophysical studies, so they're kind of just like, it's like a crapshoot basically. We'll do this.
Sounds like they took a lot for granted, and they didn't want they didn't want to spend the money probably.
Yeah, the risk they calculate this. They put a price on our head. They were willing to accept the risk. It's all calculated in their plans, and so I believe the reason why they didn't do proper studies and didn't do the proper drilling techniques is mainly because of going through this population dense area. There's a lot more people, a lot more eyes on, and they didn't want to do this thing called pneumatic hammer drilling to get, in the drilling process, it's very loud. And they ended up having to do it anyway a couple years later when they screwed up so much. And I now know why they didn't want to, because people 2 miles away can hear it. And it's just so loud, they could never hide it. They were trying to hide it under our noses, like trying to put this pipe in, and they almost were successful, except for the fact watchdogs and residents started standing up and going to their elected officials and saying, what the heck and how did this get through? Because it's ridiculous. So they were very sneaky. And I believe Mother Nature bit them right back in their own ass.
Well, so what was what year did you first start documenting?
I would say mostly my video evidence and stuff began in early 2017. When I started documenting, just with the video. I was involved, online and doing coalition stuff. But after, getting images on the Marys, we really started having a lot of problems in 2017. So that's when I started documenting here. I started I learned from the Atlantic Sunrise. In Lancaster they had Atlantic Sunrise pipeline, which is a 40-inch Williams natural gas line. And I actually learned from somebody out there named Robin. She would take me around and show me all the sites, and we just started documenting. So, I watched what other people did in their movements and found, and just took it to mine and tried to refine it to make it easy to get more people involved. Not one person can do this. You need a team.
Sure. I know there's a whole bunch of people in Southwest Virginia that are documenting the Mountain Valley Pipeline.
Yes, doing a great job out there.
They are. It's the same motivation, wanting to protect the water.
And it's really ridiculous that we have to do this when we have an agency that's supposedly supposed to do that. But no, it's the citizens who capture all of the evidence, and then you've had violations in your in the MVP. Those violations we send into the DEP, and we actually have to harass them to actually give them a fine for violating Clean Water Act or their own permits. They just kind of let them go.
Right.
It's absurd.
Well, there's a lot of money at stake, and they're probably looking at the economic development side of it politically.
It is political,
which is like totally just putting the profit before people's health and lives. So, what was the first violation that you remember documenting?
Oh, definitely erosion and sediment control. I actually was new at it, so I was just saying oh my gosh, this noise is ridiculous. Is this legal? So I was just taking pictures this can't be. Groundwater, them telling us it wasn't groundwater, and they're it's surface runoff, and I was no, it's groundwater because it's at it was 90 degrees out. And you took a temperature of the water, and it was in the 70s, and groundwater is 58 degrees Fahrenheit, I believe. So if it's 90 degrees out, that ain't surface runoff. It's groundwater coming up. So they're trying to lie to people where they're drilling their backyard, who are having filtration problems, just having flooding, and it's because they punctured groundwater. There's a natural drainage system in the ground. So it rains and then it soaks through, and it has this natural system. Maybe it's a fault or a fissure that it goes into, and then into your aquifers or your streams or springs. But they ended up plugging that or intercepting them and rerouting groundwater.
They're diverting
Yep, they're diverting it. And then when they do that, they have what's called an inadvertent return or a frack out, meaning I hate the word inadvertent because it's part of the plan. They know it's going to happen. So in my opinion, it's not inadvertent. It's when the drilling fluid finds its way to the surface. And that shows you there's a fissure somewhere or a crack or something in the subsurface feature or the rock bed. They would actually end up grouting that. So they fill in with grout until they until they feel comfortable so they can continue drilling. But that just was filling in a natural drainage system.
So the grout is designed to block the leak?
Yeah, so they're drilling their borehole. So if there's a fracture, if there's something when they're drilling their borehole, if it's off to the side, that's the drill fluid, the lubricant that they use to lubricate the drill head, it's under pressure actually in that borehole. So it's pushing against the sides and everything. So when a fracture happens, there's a fracture there, a natural one, let's say, it's going to get pushed into that and it'll find its way to the surface. So what they do, they send grout down it and they put it under really high pressure and try to plug it up by pressurizing grout, and then that grout expands and dries, and then they continue drilling.
Well, yeah, but I guess that's really
it's
kind of well, it's kind of sloppy. I mean, because
very sloppy.
Yeah, I mean, they don't know exactly where the leaks are, so they have to probably put a ton of grout down there, and then. If it works, that's great. But who's monitoring whether it works or not is another.
That's supposed to be the Department of Environmental Protection. But here's the funny thing: they only issue permits for water crossing wetlands and then erosion and sediment control. Their purview is typically not the geology under our feet so much. They're in charge of the waterways and whatnot, of maintaining the Clean Water Act, making sure nothing gets into the waterways of Pennsylvania. However, when it comes to geology, they're actually not. They're not well versed. They're not the pros in it. The USGS is the United. That's the geological.
The federal agency, yeah.
Yeah, but that's because they study it, and they actually cite USGS papers in their DEP permits that are 7 years old. They don't do any current studies and say we know right now on this pathway. It's this is what the ground looks like underneath. They just take old stuff and it's kind of a theoretical yeah, we could do this.
Right. So it's guesswork.
They don't have any. They have a geologist from the company, the PUC, which is our Public Utility Commission, who is actually like the, I don't want to say siting, but I guess they are in charge of this pipeline, sort of. This is a self-regulated industry. We all know that.
Well, theoretically, yeah, it's
right,
or self-unregulated, more like it. So who, what company is in charge of the Mariner East 2?
That is Energy Transfer Partners, and some people know in Pennsylvania know it as Sunoco because they bought up Sunoco, which is a Pennsylvania company, Sun Oil. But it's Energy Transfer, the same company that went and did DAPL, the Rover, the Bayou Bridge. Pretty criminal entity in my opinion.
Right. So
we actually I know that I've been on here talking about the criminal charges that our district attorney put on like a year ago on this company.
Yeah.
With Tiger Swan, which everybody in the DAPL fight knows Tiger Swan very well.
They're a private security agency.
Yep,
right.
They are here in Pennsylvania, and they had like this buy a badge thing with constables that were like flashing badges out of their jurisdiction. They have weapons on them in like neighborhoods. I've encountered them several. So our DA actually brought up charges against that because that you can't like it's like impersonating cops. They have no jurisdiction here, and they're acting like police and intimidating the residents. Well, that went to the head of the Energy Transfer Security. His name's Frank something. I can't remember the name right now, but I don't even want to say his name. He's a jerk. He went into trial. I think it was Thursday, and our magistrate dropped all of the charges on him.
Wait, what happened? Yeah. Thursday, he
went to trial under the charges that our DA brought up. And
what were the charges?
Oh gosh, there's a whole litany of them. There was. It was like basically an illegal, the way they're shuffling money around to pay these constables, the way that they were telling constables to act and buy a badge. I'm still kind of confused about that, but they had a buy a badge thing, like they were buying and selling badges from these constables. The constables were doing it. So the Energy Transfer head of security was like part of this, and as well as like some really shady payment processes.
So wait, buying badges?
Yeah,
like you mean in order to be a law enforcement officer?
Like a constable just show their badge, and I guess it makes people intimidated when there's a badge, even though they have no jurisdiction here. They're coming from like Middle Pennsylvania. Like I don't.
So they get basically a fake badge to intimidate people
badge,
with.
It's a real badge.
But they're not a real
right.
law enforcement officer.
Right.
So it's basically fraud.
Yeah, this gentleman is like the head of, he was, probably the orchestrator, the puppet master of it. And he got let off on all the charges. And that was in West Whiteland Township, which is one of the, I don't have very good words with that township. I don't like anything in that township. This judge is Colonel Order of Police. I'm pretty sure he just dropped the charges because he's protecting his own. And the same judge has had Melinda Clatterbuck back months ago got arrested here for walking near an easement, and they arrested her and her husband. That's the same judge that charged them actually with trespass, even though it was very shady. Really wasn't trespass, and yet he let go the Energy Transfer Partner guy who actually has like some. And the reason they let him go. This is why they dropped the charges. Because he said the police chief knew about it. And I'm like, what does that mean?
So rather than implicating the police chief, it was looked at as a seal of approval.
Yep. It's crappy. I hope that our DA goes, her name's Deb Ryan. I hope she refiles this because that man needs to be stopped.
That's crazy. That's not the way things are supposed to work, to put it mildly. That's so corrupt. I mean, so he got let off on the charges, which points to like.
They dropped all of them.
Well, that's not justice being done. Is there money changing hands? And where?
Yes, and that's that's my thing. I love mapping out relationships of people and because. They've been here for a while, and it's kind of like an invasion. The way this company behaves is they bring in, it's like when we invade a country in the war. We come in, we bring like special forces, they kind of like recon the area, and they settle in and get to know the community so that when the big guns, the troops come out, then everything's, copacetic. Everybody knows what's going on. They're infiltrated in communities. They've done that here.
And they know where the opposition's going to be.
Exactly. They already start, like, years before they even signed contracts, they started profiling that, yes.
Yeah, that's like COINTELPRO in the 60s, where they infiltrated a lot of progressive movements. They totally decimated the Black Panthers.
Yep.
Yeah, and other...
It's ridiculous because they came in and it's like one thing every resident, I'm pretty sure you guys probably hear it, every resident hears from their elected officials is, my hands are tied. I can't do anything. There's nothing I can do out here, because it's like they always want to pass this hot potato around. No, this is the DEP. You got to call the PUC. Oh no, this is PHMSA. So it's like we're always bouncing around, and it's really to wear us down. It's set up. The system is working exactly as it's set up to. It's not broken. It's working the way it was set to.
Yes, that idea has been prevalent here. Yeah, it's not broken. It was made to be this way. We have to break it in order to fix it.
Exactly. There are some. So that was one big thing for us in the Mariner East fight that has happened this week. There are. You were talking about Attorney General Josh Shapiro. That actually has a lot of effect here too. So I've been making calls to my community to email our DA as well, and the AG that he gave us like a hotline for health and safety impacts of the fracking infrastructure, which we are downstream, being a Mariner pipeline.
Yeah.
And we are fracking infrastructure. And so that gave us an ability to get our AG to pay attention to the similar behaviors we've seen out in the fracking land and midstream. It's all the same, that we're all having the same issues. And so we got an opportunity now to get our AG's ear. And he's making it pretty public. There are going to be more charges, we heard, coming out.
I heard his press conference about the grand jury that came with 2-year investigation into this, and they've come out with how many criminal charges?
Gosh, I don't know how many.
I think it's like 15. It's like.
If you want, real quick.
That's all right. We'll cover that more later in the show, but yeah, I don't want to get too sidetracked. But so there. Didn't he say something? Because he was specifically talking about fracking in that press conference. But
right.
And somebody asked, I think one of the reporters asked about pipelines. He said there'd be more coming on that later.
There will be, yes. And so it's all connected, we know. And it's more or less that he's utilizing something that everybody here knows very well, which is our Pennsylvania Constitution, Article 1, Section 27. It's the Environmental Rights Amendment. And I'm going to read it to you real quick, okay? It says,
sure.
The people have a right to clean air, pure water, and to the preservation of the natural, scenic, historic, and aesthetic values of the environment. Pennsylvania's public natural resources are the common property of all the people, including generations yet to come. As trustees of these resources, the Commonwealth shall conserve and maintain them for the benefit of all the people. And in our water and turning it into radioactive brine,
right.
Resource.
So tell me about the brine. What is that?
So as you know, it's hydraulic fracturing, and that means they're using under pressure water, like a liquid, to cause those fractures. And so what they do is they put down into the well all of this, it's our water. They use tons and tons of water. I think it's 5 million gallons or something like that per well pad per day.
Wow.
It's insane. It's so much. And then they put it down with a bunch of other chemicals for bactericides. They have to do all this stuff. It's just loaded with, I'm sure Ray Kemble and Craig could tell you exactly what's in it.
Bactericides?
Yeah, there's that. It's because there's a lot of bacteria down there, and we're not really sure what it is. It's not, humans haven't touched it. So they want to they do put stuff in there to make sure that doesn't come up and maybe
so
like a pathogenic.
So they're basically shooting up Mother Earth with antibiotics.
Yeah, it's with that and just oh my God, there's so many chemicals. Benzene, like it's an amazing amount of chemicals they put down. Absurd. But when they go down into the Marcellus Shale is some of the most radioactive shale I think they found thus far. It is so highly radioactive. So when they put that water down there, that brine, then they got to bring it back up. So what goes down must come back up. But they got to bring it back. We have the fracking brine, and they don't know what to do with it because they didn't have a cradle to grave program with their waste. So
they didn't plan on what to do with the waste. In other words,
nope, they did not. And it's probably one of the biggest failures of any industry, anything, is that what happens with the waste. What are we doing with that waste? What's your plan for it? We've kind of gotten off track with that, I believe. That's why I have so many problems. With this industry, they're like, oh, shoot, it's so much, right? They put it in pools. The pools would leak. Then they're like, what can we do with it? They started spraying it on roads as de-icer.
Oh, so because it's called brine because it has a lot of salts in it?
Salt. Right. It comes up salty.
But as you were referring to it earlier, there's also radiation.
That's the scary part about it. And radiation, I mean, it's got to stay down there. Like you're bringing up something that we can't, our bodies and the nature out here is not able to handle. It's put down there for a reason. And we're not supposed to be bringing it back up because that's what keeps us alive. If that stuff was on the surface, we wouldn't be the creatures we are right now, and we wouldn't even be alive. It's so radioactive, this stuff. You can't even touch it. A piece of shale, if they brought it up. It's very dangerous. It's a really reckless process. And so...
Right, and it has affected people's health in Pennsylvania, as I recall.
Absolutely. And we don't even know, actually, the exact effects. We do know people are getting sick. We don't know how many effects it is because there's no studies. And that's what I did want to bring up because that's the other part of this. All those families in southwestern Pennsylvania people have heard about that have the Ewing sarcoma. These are children. These are cancer clusters around in southwestern Pennsylvania around fracking infrastructure. There's like 28 kids that had a rare cancer cluster in one school. Like, that's ridiculous. And they happen to be around fracking. And there's water contamination. There's air pollution. There's radioactivity. We don't know. The reason why it probably attacked kids is because kids are outside playing in the grass, and kids are outside the most.
Yeah.
Eating, touching. They're like all into, they're playing sports out near a school that's surrounded by fracking wells. When you have flaring and there's radioactivity doesn't burn off, so like all this stuff could be like settling on the ground after it comes out of the air, And who knows what everybody else's effects are because it's not being tracked. But there is like the Environmental Health Project and supposedly the Department of Health. They have like a hotline where you can report your health issues and concerns. And if it's okay, can I read you something that's actually happening that these parents have done recently and called out to Dr. Levine, our Department of Health? It speaks directly to cancer. These are parents who lost their children or a family member or a friend to this cancer. It says, as a part of a loosely formed coalition to respond to the emerging cancer crisis in southwestern Pennsylvania, Physicians for Social Responsibility Pennsylvania and Southwestern Pennsylvania Environmental Health Project had planned an initial meeting with Secretary of Health, Dr. Levine, and other staff members from the Pennsylvania Department of Health prior to knowing that the grand jury report was going to be revealed. The purpose of the meeting was to establish a relationship between the Department of Health and the communities across the state concerned about the process of integrity of the state's proposed investigations into the cancer crisis, wherein 67 cases of rare cancer in a small, heavily fracked area of southwestern Pennsylvania has alarmed not only residents of that area, but throughout the state that has been inundated with reckless expansion of the unconventional gas drilling, which is fracking. In this industry, with an inadequate and irresponsible lack of government oversight and protection. The investigations were promised after the impacted families confronted Governor Wolf in November of 2019, and I remember that. It was an awesome day. After delaying the first attempt to meet for over 2 months, the Department of Health canceled the initially scheduled visit due to the pandemic. They also rejected a proposal to have the study process overview to the investigation, which is interesting. This week's meeting was frustrating before it even started because of the months of delay, the rejection of our goal to secure transparency through the study process overview, and the gross negligence revealed in the grand jury report. The meeting started out with a focus on transparency with the community, but it resulted in frustration. It started out, excuse me. The meeting started out with a focus on transparency with the community, but resulted in frustration. The impacted families deserve a moment to reflect on what came out of the meeting. But in the meantime, it can be said that the Department of Health has a great deal of work to do to live up to the basic standard of expectations of Pennsylvanians in regards to health protections from the UGD industry. Fortunately, after frustrating, the glimmer of hope came from us across the Atlantic and Ireland. And that's where you guys need to also know. Ireland is moving to ban LNG imports.
Yeah, I saw that.
Huge thing. That's huge.
Well, hopefully more countries will follow suit.
Exactly. It starts to trickle. Other countries will see it's possible, and then yes. And if we cut off the ability for Pennsylvania fracked gas to be exported, it's isolating, attacking them, just like they've been doing to us. So it's almost like if you've got nowhere to sell it to, and you guys are having problems. Your stuff's going to export too. So we have to stop
I was mentioning that earlier.
Yeah, we have to stop. So we've got a lot going on. We have the cancer clusters. We have that international news was so nice to have, a glimmer of hope. And then the AG had the 3 announcements within the last few weeks. It's really busy times here in Pennsylvania fracking, but I'll tell you right now, a month or two ago, I did not think I was a little more defeated. There was just nothing going on, and we always feel like, especially in election season, we're always fed this BS, which we all know that this could also be an election thing. But AG Jeff Shapiro had a grand jury, and there was testimony. He opened up Pandora's box, and I don't believe they knew how bad things were, really. So
no, because obviously, if they ask the people involved, they're used to gaslighting basically the public, so they're going to gaslight governmental officials as well, other ones besides their own department, covering for themselves. So outside of the DEP, and how, for instance, have elected officials, the people that most people would turn to, their representatives, how have they played a part in this?
In the beginning, I feel like before COVID, I feel like we had a lot of attention right before elections. Typically, basically, we get, everybody cares about the pipeline to get into office, and then they do nothing. So I would say right now where we're at, I would say there's maybe 1 or 2 or 3. We have Chris Robb, we got Danielle Farrell, and then my senator Katie Muth are probably the only people I've really actually, proactively supported. It's not like we have to beg the crap out of them. What they have done has tried to plead with the DEP. They've signed on petitions, stood with us, but when it comes down to it, they're a minority in the House and in the Senate, and there's not much support. It's just that Pennsylvania is bought by the extraction, the resource extraction industry. So
they basically fund all the politicians.
Yeah, there's legislation that I know my representative Danielle Farrell has introduced. We try to get legislation that makes you can't build pipelines or fracking from X amount of distance from a house, for example, or a school.
Right, some protection.
More safety. Right, and I think what we need to be focusing on, my personal opinion, is on these rights of nature, the protections. It's actually something we need to focus on because nature doesn't need us, we need it, and we continue to say we can be as safe as you want, but if we're not protecting the natural resources that we need to survive, we're not. It's almost a false sense of safety. And so pipelines over here, there is no safe pipeline first, but so pipelines farther from your house, you're still in the blast zone. I'd rather focus on protecting the water, right, and
Yeah.
and making sure that we have the things to keep us healthy and keep us fighting these other stuff. Like I can't fight without your water. We're made of water. So
Yeah.
when we have dirty water, when we're getting sick, our immunity's hurt. So our pollution here, we have an F quality air rating. They want to make us a petrochemical hub, and we already have an F quality air
So
rating.
what? Tell me about that scale.
I don't. You know what? This year I've seen a couple of them. I don't really understand it, to be honest with you. I just was baffled to find out that ours came out as that.
What is it a measure of?
It's basically a measure of like smog, air pollution in an area.
I see.
It can come from anything, cars or driving or like farming. There's so many things that contribute. We have I have like with 2 pump stations, 3 pump stations, and a compressor station all within like a 5-mile radius of 5-10 mile radius of my house. So I don't even know, probably more than that. And so those things are pumping out, as we all know, methane and other stuff because we don't really know. But
so they nobody knows what's in the stuff.
We're downstream, so most of it would be processed gases, so they should be like more clean than what they see out in fracking land, where it's coming out of the ground. So it's got everything with it, and they clean it up, and we get methane. We have obviously natural gas. We also have the Mariner East, which is carrying butane, propane, and ethane, and that is. Like these things, ethane and methane both can carry, the radioactivity as well. So I think those molecules can. So, what's coming out of those pumping stations? I don't know. Nobody's got air monitors. We've all requested them. When we have a hot day, like a hot, bad air quality day, that it's like red, orange, and yellow. I keep saying, why are you letting them pump out more stuff when there's people around? Like these houses are surrounding them. Kids with asthma can't even go outside. So why are they allowed to up their process sometimes? Like. There should be laws about that. Like, on bad air quality days, you guys got to shut down. You shut down. You're done.
Well, yeah. So those gases, butane, people use that, old cigarette lighters, big cigarette lighters, and they're ubiquitous. And a lot of industry, I guess, depends on that at this point. Is the butane and ethane what is it, ethylene? Propane. Are those? Where are those coming from? Is that
okay? So they are They're byproducts of fracking and wet Marcellus.
So and along with the methane, they also get butane and propane.
Yep. When you frack, whatever the heck's under there, it's coming up. And what happened is they got to do something with it. They couldn't burn it off anymore. It was illegal. They were running out of storage. So they're building those cracker plants, which are not done, but they built the Mariner East to move product, get it out of here. We don't want it.
Right.
But they created a demand. So they're making plastics out of it.
Right. Cracker plants are what all the plastic bags in the grocery store are made from.
They're making nurdles, plastic nurdles. So it comes from, cracker plants messing with the molecules to make polyethylene, basically. And ethane, it's just the precursors, ethane. They need the ethane. So, this whole process, it wasn't like we did that before. They had to figure out what to do with the product. And that's like they always create demands. That's why they're building natural gas power plants. We don't really need them. Oh, it's a cleaner. But the whole process is actually more detrimental to our climate.
It's far worse greenhouse gas,
absolutely.
methane is than anything that the coal and oil industry was putting out.
Right.
So it's kind of like, hey, we have a global climate change. Let's turn the thermostat up.
Well, Jay, this past week we had a DEP public hearing about methane, the methane rule change. They would have they're trying to do methane standards restrictions and stuff like that, which is so flawed. It's ridiculous. And just as a chemist, I'm just sitting here they don't even know what and how much is methane. How do you cap or stop methane if you don't even know how much it's coming out? There's never been studies.
It's invisible. It's an invisible gas.
It's just one of those pieces of legislation. It's like, okay, so we did this, so it's safe now. I'm like, no, we need studies. We need to know every piece of flange, every meeting in a pipeline and a valve station. Those are places that there can be leaks. We have orphaned and abandoned wells. Oh my gosh, so many of them. Lori Barr, she's a wonderful documenter. She follows that. Orphaned and abandoned wells are just sitting there leaking out. They don't even know how many there are. She goes around and finds them, though.
So, in other words, the fossil fuel industry goes in and sets up wells, drills for oil and gas, and once they're done with it, there's no requirement to disassemble it and seal it up.
Well, there is a requirement it's like rendering it safe in their world, and so they have to cap it, but there's no requirement for maintenance. The maintenance requirement is ridiculous. It's like every 20 years they got to check it. I mean, come on. Like, it's going to rot. The casing's fail.
So it could be leaking for 20 years before they catch it.
Yes, good, until somebody complains.
And they do.
Oh, yeah, they do. And that's what she documents, my friend Lori Barr. There's also, like, just to be clear, Pennsylvania for 150 years has been, like, extracting, oil out of the ground. And so there's unconventional wells and then conventional wells, like the older oil. So we have both. And, these fracking companies are coming in, and they don't even know where those old conventional wells are. And they start fracking, and they've had, like, blowouts in a conventional well that they didn't know existed. It's dead.
So there's no, like, map showing where all of them are.
They're starting to. They're starting to get that together because I'm going to say probably citizen watchdogs complain, activists complain, like, this is ridiculous. It's just one of the problems I have right now with our DEP and our government, Governor Wolf, is that, we just said, okay, it's criminal what you guys did, Range Resources, Cabot. You guys are really bad criminals. Mariner East has gotten so many violations. They're like, you're guilty in so many ways. Yet the DEP continues to permit these perps. And that is ridiculous. The day that he announced the AG announced this stuff to Cabot and Range about Range Resources, they literally, one of our friends went on and looked at the permitting, and they literally permitted them that same day, like a bunch of permits.
Yeah, it's like the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing.
No, if they're criminals, I want to see some people in jail. And I'm not a lawyer, okay? So in Pennsylvania, we have this thing where they got personhood. Some Supreme Court person here said that corporations can have personhood rights. And I was like, fine. If you want personhood rights, then if you're guilty of killing children with cancer, you're going to jail like a person then. have your personhood rights, but you're going to jail. These slap on the wrist and these fines is a drop in the bucket to these people. And allowing they're basically permitting them to kill us some more. It's basically the way I see it, and I think it's ridiculous.
Wow. This is fascinating, PK. And we're coming towards the top of the hour. Craig and Ray are going to be calling in just a minute.
Oh, my gosh, I love those too.
Yeah, this should be a fascinating dialogue with all you guys. I just got to do the station ID.
Yep, I'm putting myself on mute. All right, go for it.
Hey, you're listening to WRWK 93.9 LPFM, based in Midlothian, Virginia, serving Chesterfield County, Richmond, and the whole area wherever you can pick it up. It's a low-power station, so hopefully no trees or geography are blocking the signal. But if it is, tune us in online at TheWorkFM.org or on Facebook. We're live streaming right now, both on Citizen Voices Radio and The Work FM, our page for the station. And we've been talking to PK Ditty. The topic today, June 28th, 2020, is the fracking and pipeline activity in Pennsylvania. And I think we have Ray here.
Yeah, hold on. I'm going to bring Craig in.
Hey, okay, great. And
hold on.
I think PK is on the line as well. So back to the show.
I am.
Yes.
Yeah. You there, Craig?
Yes.
Craig. All right.
Oh, excellent.
We're both on, Jay.
All right. Well, for our listeners, we're talking now also with Ray Kemble from Dimock, Pennsylvania, and Craig Stevens, who, Craig, you have property in Dimock also, but you live in North Virginia. And
I have property in Silver Lake Township, about 15 miles away, and I have two properties: a big 115-acre property and our ancestral home property.
right. So your family has been there for a bit.
188 years, just for a while.
Wow, that's pretty solid roots there. And so both of you have been outstanding advocates for stopping the activity that we now see coming to a head, hopefully, in Pennsylvania. And with the Attorney General bringing criminal charges against Cabot Oil, I know both of you have been had some involvement with Cabot in one way or another for a while. Ray, do you want to tell people about what happened in your neighborhood?
Oh, I'm just going to go back part way. In 2008, they started drilling and fracking. And when they started doing this, of course, the water contamination started, up on Norma Ferrantino. Her well blew up from the methane, which, they denied. And just worked its way down Carter Road to everybody. Then came down over to me, down over to the next, 3 houses below me. So, we all got groundwater contamination due to gas drilling and fracking. And we've been fighting this ever since. In 2012, they turned around and came inside the 9-mile moratorium after they got everybody to sign these gag orders and take their little piddly settlements that we were coerced and forced into taking.
So you had to sign a non-disclosure agreement in order to receive money?
Right. And it was a piddly amount. And if you listen to the industry, they gave us double our property values and everything else. Well, we don't know why, but we're all upset. No, they gave us double our tax assessment. And if you know anything about property value, your tax assessment is very, very low. The tax assessment here hadn't been done in 20 years, and the tax assessment on this is $16,000.
Oh, goodness. And what do you think it's worth?
Well, the property was appraised at 4 1/4. But the point being is, they gave us double the tax assessment price.
Right.
So they go, we gave double the property value. No, you gave double the tax assessment price, not the appraised value. Okay, but that's part of the crap.
So
right?
they lowballed you, and
they lowballed everybody.
Yeah, and then they said that you guys can't talk about it.
Right, but they turned around after they got everybody to sign this. They were in coerce with DEP before August. All this stuff was done and signed in September. They were already conspiring against us, and DEP was going to allow them to come in and frack 7 wells in Dimmick that was in the 9-mile moratorium. The moratorium that they're not allowed to drill or frack in.
How did that moratorium come about?
That was done by John Hanger, the Secretary of DEP, and Scott Perry. I think it was 2010, if I remember right, that was done. And that was done because they went after them. There's 4 COSAs that was done between DEP, which is the Department of Environmental Protection,
right,
and the Cabot Oil and Gas, stating they contaminated our water. They admitted it. They signed it. Their CEO signed it. Their legal counsel signed it. This was done 4 times. The one I mentioned 13 times then, by name, that they contaminated my water. But we still don't have water.
So you're living in a house that has no water.
That's right. Well, I have to truck it in.
You truck it in yourself.
That's right. So DEP ordered them to put these buffaloes in and give us replacement water. They did that for like 2.5 years. They stopped it. DEP says, oh, well, we met our criteria, and they let them stop delivering us water. So they fracked these wells in 2012. And when they did, brand new water contamination. These two wells are 2,500 feet from my house.
Wow.
We have brand new water contamination. Okay, my well went 100 times worse. I called my lawyer up, trying to tell him what happened and everything that happened. He goes, they broke the agreement. He goes, it's over. He goes, do whatever you want. Start talking, and I've started right back up talking, and I haven't stopped.
Which is why they're suing you, I guess.
Yep.
Right. Well, and Craig, both you guys have been speaking out against fracking because of your experience there, and you've had your water contaminated up there also, haven't you?
Yeah, mine changed quality. They attempted to put a 16-inch gas line behind my property, on my neighbor's property, but underneath my creek in my backyard, and they ended up blowing out or having IRTS, inadvertent return to surface. The DEP, all the regulatory authorities around the country call that an IRTS, an inadvertent return to surface. But the workers that day called it a blowout. So I call it a blowout. Yeah, they had 8 of them in my creek in my backyard over 2.5 months trying to put a 16-inch gas line underneath the property. And so my water, about a year later, started tasting like metal. Really started off lightly and then got stronger. But I started to have spontaneous nosebleeds. I had 8 of them over 2 weeks.
Wow.
Nobody cared. Call the Department of Health, call the DEP, whatever. Yeah, whatever. You're like, they asked me to call them if I had health problems because of all the blowouts. They tested my water before the horizontal directional drilling.
Yeah.
Remember, I said 16-inch pipeline, not 42-inch like you guys have going through Virginia down there. They couldn't get a 16-inch gas line underneath my 20-foot wide trout stream without blowing the bottom of it out 8 times over 2.5 months. So when they did that, they required water testing from an independent testing before, during the blowouts, and after. And then they said, call us if anything changes. So a year later, in 2013, I called them and said, hey, I'm having metal taste. And they said, do you have any health problems? No. We'll call the Department of Health if you do. So I asked them, will you come and test my water now that I'm having these nosebleeds? Nope. They've refused for the last 7 years to come and retest my water, even though they told me to call them if I had any water changes. So that's DEP for you. Don't expect protection. That's what DEP stands for.
Oh, that's horrible. Yeah. Well, that dovetails well with what PK's been talking about. And now it seems like their karma's coming back to bite them, hopefully. What do you think of the proceedings from the Attorney General?
Who are you talking to?
Anybody. But Craig, go ahead.
Okay, well, Ray, we were involved in that. 3 years ago, we had a meeting at the Attorney General's office. When Josh Shapiro got in, I had called the Attorney General's office for 7.5 years asking for a meeting, and they never gave me one. He gets in, and 90 days after he's in, they gave me a meeting. I brought 16 other friends. That was on May 4th, 2017. We pleaded our case for 5 hours to the lead investigators. They opened a larger investigation, and we gave them more names. They ended up interviewing over 250 residents in 20 counties from that. And out of that comes this. So we, of course, wanted something to happen right away. But because it was an investigation, they did 2 years of investigating till 2019 or late 2018, and then they put 2 grand juries together. They were secret, but we knew of them just because we knew all the people that went and testified. They weren't allowed to tell us what they were doing or whatever. We just knew of the grand juries. So we decided, since that's happening, we'll wait and see. And the frustrating was the first one they did was Range, and when they released that information, they let Range plead no contest to a felony and a misdemeanor, 1 felony and 1 misdemeanor, which became about $250,000 in fines. Half of that was given to, I'm trying to remember the name of the organization, but it was given to a charitable organization that has to do with water. And so we were very unhappy with that, because that's where the Children's Rare Cancer story came out of. So they got away with coffee money, basically spending coffee money. $250,000 to these guys is like pocket change.
Yeah.
So that was 3 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, Cabot gets, 4 days after that announcement about range, Cabot gets 15 counts, 9 of them felonies. Now we're talking, and they refused, it looks like they refused to take any plea deal or no contest on any of the charges. So, of course, the charges, that was on the 15th.
Yeah.
Very next day on the 16th, they dropped those charges into Susquehanna County Courthouse. I don't know about Ray. I'm pretty sure he feels the same way. We never in our lifetime, I didn't think, I'll be 60 in the next month. I didn't think I'd see in my lifetime one of these companies have to be dragged into Susquehanna County Court and after criminal charges. This is like a dream come true for us. We thought it was a never-ending story. And so it's been interesting. It's kind of a roller coaster ride. We were very upset about what they did to our friends in southwestern PA by letting Range walk away from this with the pocket money. Then all of a sudden we get criminal charges, and then a week later, last Thursday, I have the document. I printed it out right in front of me. It's 243 pages long, I believe. I'm reading it. This is like Moby Dick, the Moby Dick of environmental and grand jury documents. And it clearly states that not only are the drillers responsible, but the governor's office, the DEP, the Department of Health, and the legislature, both the Senate and the House, have been complicit in not handling this at all. And these are also criminal issues. So my thought is if these are criminal charges that they did. So
criminal complicity, yeah.
Well, yeah. If you're looking the other way, I will give you an example. Ray and I share the same senator for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, Gene Yaw. We do not share the same House member. Mine is a guy named Jonathan Fritz, F-R-I-T-Z, totally pro-gas, and he's got Tina Pickett, totally pro-gas for Demick because he's 15 miles away from me. Senator Yaw, who covers a very large district, is totally pro-gas. This guy, and we had a U.S. congressman named Tom Marino. He resigned from office, and the new guy that came in, and Tom Marino said he would come and visit us 3 times. He'd come on a tour, and he just didn't do it after he told us in public. We have him on film saying it. So the new guy is called Fred Keller. That's our U.S. congressman. It's the second largest congressional district in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. I think it's the 12th district. And so this guy is totally bought and sold by the industry. He refuses to acknowledge any harm. Not all of them do. So this is going to be great. This is a very large document. If I wad it up tight, it's still going to hurt if I put it somewhere where the sun doesn't shine for these people. And that's really what we're going to do. We're going to get this on the front page of every paper we can. We're going to put it to every newspaper in the Commonwealth, and we're going to make it known that they are really responsible. The governor's office issues permits through the DEP. The Department of Health is supposed to look out for health related to anything they allow, and the legislature allows them to do this. So they're all complicit in these charges. They should all be taken down. Either they have to swear an oath, a blood oath, that they know there's problems and they're going to fix them, or they go to jail with the ones or whatever needs to happen to them for the other ones.
So do you think in the upcoming proceedings against Cabot that there will be individuals held accountable?
No, they're suing they're charging a corporation, so it's very hard to do that. But remember what I said. Cabot does not admit to anything. Let me just read this for you, Jay. This is the statement. Remember, the charges came out, were made public on the 16th of June. On the 18th, 2 days later, Cabot releases a statement. It says, Cabot categorically denies assertions that the company acted with indifference towards the community where we live and operate. Period. Our history and involvement in the community shows a very different reality than what was painted in this narrative. Period. We take our responsibilities seriously, and we are proud of our commitment to the environmental stewardship. Period. Cabot is an industry leader with proven track record of pioneering innovative technologies and adopting best practices in our operations. Period. Now, okay, let me remind you what I just said. They said this is a narrative. These are criminal charges. This is not a narrative.
It sounds like their marketing department put that out.
What?
It sounds like their marketing department put that out.
That's all their stuff. PR is usually former PSYOPs members from the U.S. military. So I'll let Ray chime in. But my thing is, these guys are never going to admit they're wrongdoing. So I'm going to be very, very curious what their plea is to these 15 charges, 6 misdemeanors, 9 felonies. The corporation is going to have to, sooner or later, somebody's going to have to raise their hand and say guilty or not guilty to these. That's just the way it works. And so we are going to be there. We're going to be present. July 21st is their court date. That's coming up 3 weeks from Tuesday. We will be there, and we're going to invite our friends to come and stand with the citizens, not only in Dimick, but all over, whether their water was destroyed by fracking, by pipeline installation, or any other thing, by any industry. We're going to stand with our neighbors, many of which have lived without water. In Dimick, it's 12 years. In southwestern PA, some communities for 16 years. So
really,
we're going to be there. We're going to witness this.
Yeah.
Well, George Stark puts out these little press things. That's their PR guy for the press. Okay. My lawyer put George Stark into a deposition, and on the 16th of the beginning of this year, he was asked about, water contamination and so forth, and his statement is, we've learned from Dimick, and we do it much better now. We don't have the problems we had at Dimick. And he goes, really, Mr. Stark? And he pulls out the DEP report and slides it in front of him. Now, you got to remember, we're 16 days into the new year. He lays a sheet in front of him from DEP, and I think it was 25 or 30 charges fined by DEP against Cabot Oil and Gas, Phillies, casing failure. I mean, and the list just went on down the line. And he sat there and he denied, he goes, I don't know anything about this. So, I mean, we're into the new year. They're saying they're doing it better. No, the only thing they've done is learn how to cover it up better. That's the only thing they've done. They're still doing the exact same thing, and they're still contaminating and polluting everywhere they do work.
Wow. Well, thank you. Well, let's see here. Sorry, I just got a.
And just so you remember, Jay, I got a 38-year master driller sitting here listening to this call right now. He's here.
Oh, right, Lee. Hello, Lee.
How are you?
Good. Yeah. So you know a lot about what's been going on with the drilling problems they've been having.
Yeah, and these guys are right on key, and they're in the right.
Yeah, it's really nice to see some sort of cross our fingers that this changes something. I mean, that's the whole idea of a grand jury, is that they're catching the crooks at work. And
well, they're already trying to cover it up, Jay. Okay, Friday, I called my neighbor up and said, hey, there's a great pickup truck on Costello 1. Now, Costello 1 is a gas pad that is mentioned in the grand jury and the complaints that were filed against them, along with 8H, Guestford 8H, and Guestford 4H. Now, he's up on the pad, so I called my neighbor up there, and I told him what was going on. He goes, get the hell up there and find out what's going on. I go, okay. I drove up onto the pad with Lee. Now, I got my neighbor's permission, so nobody can say anything about me being on this pad. And I got him still on the phone. Well, the DEP kid. So Ryan goes, all right, you guys deal with it. And he hung up. So we're talking to the guy. So I got the guy to give us his business card. So he gives us his business card. He's only been working for the department for 2 years. He's a water tester. He tests water. They're understaffed, so I told him to go inspect pads. Because I don't know how to do that. He goes, here, just go by the handbook. And they're sending him out to check these pads. We educated this kid so quick. Now, it's illegal to be venting gas wells into the atmosphere. Because Costello 1 is padlocked open, going into a 2-inch line and into a plastic buffalo tank sitting on the ground with no containment, sitting there venting off into the air. And this has been going on here for like 3 years, which I've been complaining about. They also turned around and told us that the well was plugged. It's not plugged. He even turned around and told me that it is an active well. So DEP officials lied to us saying the well was plugged because it's not. And here they are venting this thing off in the air. So they're already getting people coming out here on these pads that are mentioned in this, and they're going to start trying to hide things. You know, we're going to try to start doing cover-ups is what they're going to do.
Right.
And that's what they're good at.
They're going to actually plug it, probably.
I doubt that very much. If they plug that well off, you know what's going to happen with water supplies here? You're going to be able to light off the wellhead onto it and have a 30-foot flame come off the wellhead.
Oh, wow. Well,
because it's going to push that gas right into the aquifer again. See, they're trying to do a cover-up and say, see, there's no methane in the water. No, of course not, because you're venting the well into the air 500 feet from the front of my house.
Wow.
And then,
so that's really toxic. Why would they waste the product like that? Why don't they just
because they're trying to cover up the damage of the methane being in the water.
But wouldn't they want to not vent it, but put it in a truck or a pipeline?
Well, they can't. You know, the problem is then you put it in the pipeline again, you're under pressure and it's leaking because the casing has failed. It's leaking out in the groundwater. But see, the other problem is it's not just the methane coming in the water. It's all the other the toxic cocktail that is following that methane into the groundwater. All the fracking fluids is following that methane into the groundwater. So I asked him, he goes, well, I tested the water here for them and everything else. But he goes, and this is what almost knocked me on my ass. But we didn't test for any of the biocides at all. And I looked at him and go, you just did a standard water test for heavy metal and that's it. Yeah. They did not test their well for any biocides whatsoever. He goes, the water looked fine, so, no sense. I was absolutely dumbfounded, and his girlfriend showed up, and I made him repeat it right in front of her again. It was like, I wouldn't be drinking that water.
Yeah, no kidding. Who knows what they would do to you?
But it's crazy. And then we drove up the road, and I looked at, for an 8H pad and the 4H pad, and I looked at Lee. I go, wait a minute. There's something wrong here. He goes, what? I go, the 8H sign is missing. They only have 4R up there now. So I called Vera up. I said, Vera, do me a favor, hon, real quick. She goes, what? I go, check your photos. I go, I can't find it right now on my stuff. I go, but I know you got pictures of it. So Vera sends me the photograph showing the pad signs for Cabot Oil and Gas showing 8H and 4R.
And what does that
photographs of it.
What does that stand for? Those
vertical and horizontal. But on 4 they had an R after 4, and we have no clue what R means. Now it says H, but at the beginning it had an R on it, and we have no clue what an R meant.
Oops.
Who did we lose?
Oops.
Here.
Sorry.
PK.
PK. She just hung up so that Vera can call in on that line.
All right.
Great. Let Vera tell that story, Ray, about what used to be there. She's got documentation of every wall in the county, probably.
Oh yeah, but I mean the point is she just sent it to me. So I mean that's
perfect.
That's something new. It was like I knew the sign was missing.
Yeah. Wow.
Well, so
you're basically describing shenanigans designed to hide stuff, so that people don't find out what they're doing, which is, really
contaminating the people.
Well, it's so problematic on so many levels. That people in charge of that would have no empathy for fellow human beings, so much so that they're willing to lie in order to, make money, help the company's stock price, all those things that are crazy. And I think we've got Vera now. Oh. Yeah. Hello. Is it?
Hi.
We have Vera now. Oh, good.
Yeah. Hi.
Yeah. Welcome to the show. We're talking with Vera Scroggins here, and you know both Ray and Craig, who are on the line also.
Yes, and PK. I know PK too.
Yeah, PK had to drop off so that I could have the line open for you. But
oh, that was nice of her.
Yeah. So, will you describe who you are and what you do for our listeners?
Yes, I'm a resident of Susquehanna County, Pennsylvania. It's a rural county. I've been there about 30 years, and I like to do photography and writing and videotaping. So I decided to be a citizen journalist when I saw the first drill rig, approximately 2008 or 2009, in Dimock, Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
And I was shocked to see that on a farm and didn't realize they could do industrial activity on farms and next to homes. So I decided to document from then on everything I could see, everything I could do, witness, so that we would have a record in case we needed it in court or for the future, so that nobody could say, like in Nazi Germany, we didn't know what was going on. We don't know anything. We don't have any records besides the government records. So I wanted to be a record for the people and myself.
Well, thank you for doing that. That's you're trying to save the water. I know. And what was the first thing that actually got you involved?
Well, the drill rig that I saw on a farm in Dimock, I thought that was crazy. And
right.
then I was shown by my friend who lives in Dimock, Susan. She showed me people who had water changes within a month of gas drilling near their homes that were like within 500 feet of their homes. And so I went to visit them, and then I was shocked again.
Yeah. And so you've been a citizen journalist, watchdog. When did that start? What year?
About 2008. So I've been doing this for about, I don't know, what is that? 11 years, 12 years, I don't know. I'm losing count, but it's been a while. And then I do citizen gas tours for about 10 years, showing people from all over the world, citizens and elected officials, what's going on with us, show the citizen version of gas drilling, not the gas drilling company's version.
Right.
So I've done hundreds of tours, and to warn people from all over the world what's happening here, that we're harming our environment, our water, our health. So, so that's what I've been doing.
I'm assuming that in your activities is where doing that documentation is where you ran across Ray and Craig?
Yes, I ran across Ray and Craig, and then I ran across Cabot Oil and Gas besides 6 other gas companies in our county.
6 other companies? Wow.
Yes, we've had about 7 or more companies pounding away, drilling away, extracting, developing in our county. Right now, Cabot is the biggest one and the biggest violator, with over 900 violations from the DEP, from our government.
Do you know how many wellheads there are in Susquehanna County?
Yes, there's at least over 1,700, maybe 1,725.
Wow.
Gas wells, and still counting. They want to produce maybe 4,000 or 3,000 more possibly, or 2,000 more, if they're allowed to continue, but hopefully they'll be stopped. That's my goal, to see if they can be stopped and banned from my county and from Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
From the state, from the United States, wherever, from the planet.
Well, it sounds like it's become a big civil rights issue also.
Yes, it's usually in rural counties near poor people, people of supposedly also people of color, but also people who are white and Caucasian, whoever is middle class, working class, poor, who can't fight, who can't afford attorneys or big name attorneys, because they have the biggest attorneys and the most. They have whole groups of them. So yeah, it's a justice issue.
Yeah.
So,
they're getting financing from somewhere for this stuff that's speaking louder than the voices of the people.
Yeah. So I'm just doing what I can to expose them. And then Cabot dragged me to court in 2013 for supposedly trespassing on their property, and got a permanent injunction to keep me 100 feet away from their sites.
Right.
So I've been in court about 11 times with all kinds of bogus charges from them to try and stop me and discredit me.
And yeah, I think I saw a few things where they were trying to misinterpret intentionally things that you said to make it look like you were for their side of things, which is pretty ridiculous when they've been taking you to court so many times.
They took me to court a bunch of times, and I've had fines, I've had civil charges, criminal charges, I've had felonies, I've had all kinds of things, and I'm arrested twice because of them, and I am now basically nothing's on my record except the arrest, and I was able to keep my record clear.
Good.
And answer the charges and pay the fines and do the community service.
Right.
All kinds of things.
So it sounds like the legal system is backing the corporation.
Well, they do a certain amount, yes. They're backing the corporation, but different individuals in the legal system did undercover try and help me, because they couldn't be open about it without fear of some kind of retribution. So they would help me behind the scenes so that I wouldn't be too much beat up by the legal system, and to get me through it so that I didn't have a permanent record, and helped make it easier for me. So I appreciate that.
Yeah. Ray and Craig, where have you worked with Vera?
Well, Vera's my neighbor. She lives just up the road from my house there. When I moved there in January 2010 full time, Vera wasn't hard to spot. She was driving around doing, videoing, but then I met her at some events, and she won't say it, but I will. I mean, without Vera, none of us would know any of this stuff that's going on. She's like the leading edge person that finds stuff. She's great at it because she's concerned about the safety and, of her community. That's what she is. She's a community advocate. She's not an activist as far as I'm concerned, although she might like to say that, but she's more of an advocate for people. And by the way, Vera's property has been harmed, and her water also, just like mine. So, when we're being told that we're outside agitator activists, we're thinking, hey, where do you live? Because we were told that one time. Vera and I did a tour with Dr. Terry Engelder. He's considered the father of Marcellus Shale. He's from Penn State. He's a world-known geologist, and he finally came on a tour. I think, Vera, that was in 2014 or 13. He came for a tour. Vera did the tour. I was just kind of tag along, and we got this guy. We kept asking him questions he didn't know the answer to, and he's the guy they consider the leader of this entire thing, the father of Marcellus Shale. And it was interesting because when we were touring him, people come up to you and start harassing you about why are you going on a tour with Vera and Craig? They're not even from here. You're like, really? So at the time, my driver's license said the local address, and so did Vera's. They always try to pin us as somebody that's come out like outside agitators. Vera, how long have you lived in the area there?
Almost 30 years, about 30 years. So what they like to do is, when they say you're not from here, those are the many generational people. And if you're not generational, they don't consider you from there. So we moved into the area, so that's why they might say something like that. They have their own definition of who is local, who is from here.
And who was they?
The local people.
The local people. So you're from away.
I'm from away.
Right.
Yeah.
So I've run into that dynamic in a few places I lived in New England.
Well, I'm not afraid to say it. I'm from New Jersey and proud of it.
How long have you been in Dimmock, Ray?
I've been here over 20 years.
Right. So yeah, that's unfortunate when people do pull that kind of like us and them thing, but hey, if you're doing your best to protect the community, they should be welcoming you with open arms.
Yes, but they don't think we're protecting. They don't think we're protecting. They think we're like agitating, that we're just trying to take their livelihood from them. They're getting little bits of money or big bits of money from the industry, so they think we're trying to squash their dream of a lifetime, and that there's something wrong with us, and we're part of Russia, or we're part of some liberal conspiracy.
You're blocking their easy money, yeah.
Right.
They can't be millionaires now,
So what's weird is, what I noticed too, was I thought the multi-generational landowners, I'm not from there, Jay. I grew up in California, but I moved there, and I lived in my house. My family sat on the same corner for, generations after generation. I got 5 generations buried down the street, my dad included, my grandparents, my great-grandparents. So what's interesting, though, is none of the multi-generational property owners were standing up against any of this. They were just accepting it. And what's weird is it takes a person from New Jersey like Vera and a person from California like me and a guy from New Jersey like Ray. We're outside.
I'm also from New York. I'm from New York, my last place. I'm New York and New Jersey.
Yes. So Vera and I and Ray somehow come together from being neighbors and fighting the same fight, and we realize where are the local? There are 9-generation landowners there. Matter of fact,
wow.
I think, Vera, correct me if I'm wrong, Jeff Hollister, who Cabot's case goes in front of on July 21st, when I talked to him, he has a car repair shop. That's what he did for a living before he was a judge. He said his family's been there 9 generations when I was talking about the problem. So I'm thinking to myself, why aren't you guys standing up? You got far more to lose than we do, us, 6th generation or Vera and Ray moved into the area.
And Hollister is also going to be getting royalties off the Greenwood pad.
Oh, okay, that's why. They're getting royalties. They don't want to give up those royalties.
Yeah, so...
Jeff Hollister's on the Greenwood pad.
Yeah, so...
the Greenwood pad, okay. In Dimmock?
Yeah, no, the one over on the one on the Meshopping Creek Road there.
Oh, Meshopping Creek. Okay, he's part of that. Oh, okay.
So people are basically they're getting paid money, which is I guess it's a rural area. It's people need to make a living, but it seems pretty short-sighted. I mean, maybe they've been in poverty their whole lives, and all of a sudden here comes this boondoggle that's going to pay them some money. But why aren't those people more concerned with their water and the environment?
Because not everybody gets messed up with the water. It's like intermittent. Some sections, they have sections and clusters of water contamination throughout the county, but then there's individual spots. It's not like all across the board. So then they don't know if it's true or not. They don't believe some of it. They say it can't, it didn't happen to me. If it doesn't happen to them or their family or people they trust, it doesn't exist. And they want to believe the industry, and they hope the industry is telling them the truth, because, they want to believe the positive, and they're taking money, and they know that they're compromised to some degree. If you're taking money, you are compromised, and you can't be totally objective.
Yeah.
Just like we had an incinerator that was trying to come in 2 or 3 years ago. Nobody was getting paid for the incinerator, and people came out by the hundreds to stop it. So that was totally different. So there was no money to blind their eyes, to blind their conscience. So they came out and they stopped it, the environmental impacts of this incinerator, would not allow it. But since they're getting money from the gas industry, there's a blinding of the eyes and the brain to some degree.
That's really unfortunate because it's kind of like the coronavirus. You may not have it, but your friends and neighbors may get it. So, wear a mask. But they're not concerned with other people's health. I mean, they think it's.
What's really weird? What's really weird? What Vera just said. I had at least half a dozen of my neighbors on my street, Silver Creek Road, which is where Salt Springs Park is down the road. They told me, in confidence, I'm talking to them about the issues, and they go, "Hey, my water turned black and got smelly, or turned brown and got smelly. Why don't you call the DEP?" And you know what they said? Hell no. After watching what they do to people who call in, I get my name in the news. I can't go to church. The kids get, beat up at school. I mean, literally, they're afraid to even come forward. So it takes some real gumption like Ray and others to come forward, because now you're singled out. And it's pretty sickening to watch.
Yeah, you get singled out. I have two adult children, 2 grandchildren in the county who have now fled across the border to New York. But they were harassed. They had businesses. They were given a hard time because I was fighting the industry and I was vocal and open. They lost friends. They were not invited to parties. My grandkids were mistreated and made to be like second-class citizens in school. So they were hurt because of my activism or advocacy. So yes, they punish you in the ways if you stand up to the industry, the ones who want you to be silent. So this is the problem. People don't want to be punished or taken to court like me and Ray.
Right. It's they intimidate people or buy them off, and that's just so morally wrong. I mean, but money talks. I mean, that seems to be responsible for a whole host of evils in our society currently, where people don't feel connected as a community, especially when money gets in the way. The corporations are certainly putting profit before people. And have there been efforts on individual environmental organizations to stop what's been going on?
Yeah, we are the environmental organization. I have an organization, Clean Water. We are it. Yeah. So we've been trying to stop it, expose it. We are it.
Well, I mean, what sort of legal action has undergone to stop it?
Oh no, what? No, this is Craig here. What happens is when I go to a state that hasn't allowed fracking yet, to talk to them like Maryland or Florida or other places, I tell them, if you let it start here, you can't undo it, because once they wind all the money up and they start buying everybody off and all that, it's so much harder to extract it. So this has been unbelievable what's happened in the last 3 weeks compared to what has gone on. Vera's been doing this for 12 years or more, Ray about the same. And to watch it, and it wasn't done by the legislature. If we left the legislators up to this, it'd be worse than it is. We went to law enforcement, and both Vera and I and Ray and everyone else that went to that meeting 3 years ago questioned whether anything was going to come of it. Well, now we get exonerated. We get told, if I'm reading that, Vera, I don't know if you've read it yet, but if you read this 243-page document, everything we've ever said is in this thing about everything about the Department of Health is lacking, and it's amazing. I'm just in the first 20 pages, and I'm going, wow. Everything, it's like a dream date, and it didn't happen because of legislators. It didn't happen because of outside anybody. It happened because a couple citizens decided to hold around the Commonwealth decided to hold these guys accountable and go after law enforcement side, criminal charges, not civil. Civil, they pay to play, and they just keep going. But on criminal, they can't wiggle their way out of those. Just ask Vera.
Well, I'm trying to tell you how they control the police department. Last time I was in court, Jay, Craig drove me there. I'm in a full back brace and a walker, and we had 7 state troopers and 6 sheriffs in the back of the courthouse because they were scared to death what I was going to do. That's how scared they are, that they got to bring the law in like this here to try to control people, because I had activists there, everything else, they were trying to control it. And I fired my lawyer in an open courtroom. I tried to turn around and make a statement showing where my ex-lawyer and their lawyer was conspiring against me and lying to the court. The judge shut me down and stated, we're not here to deal with these contempt charges right now. George Stark, the spokesperson for Cabot Oil and Gas, ran outside the courthouse, Associated Press, everybody else, and made a statement to the press. We're not after Mr. Kemble or the other landowners here. We're just using him and the court system to get to the billionaire green groups. And that's the statement that went into the paper.
And talk a little louder. Maybe you have to get closer to the computer. You're not as loud as Craig. You're about half the volume.
And Jay, let me tell you something. I'm searching since what's happened just the other day and the previous 2 weeks. I can't find anywhere else in the country where a state that has allowed this to be there, like Texas, Oklahoma, North Dakota, Louisiana. All these, there's 33 other states that do allow unconventional drilling. I've never seen anything like this. Nobody has ever kept the pressure up like we have, and the team in southwestern PA and even the Philadelphia Friends as citizens to keep this going. It's a one-off. I can't find anywhere in the world where citizens got criminal complaints against these guys and got them to write a 243-page document. It's actually unbelievable. This is reading this thing is like reading something that completely exonerates you. They've called us liars. They've demeaned Vera, myself, and Ray, sued Ray, dragged me into court to get my bank records, everything, to try to prove that we are literally, working for Putin. That's what they say. We're working for the people who don't want America to succeed, and this is called freedom molecules. That's what the people in the U.S. Congress and Senate say. It's freedom molecules. That's what we're going to be sharing with the rest of the world. Well, if the freedom molecule requires my water, Vera's, Ray's, and everybody else's to be poisoned, I'll tell you where they can stick their freedom molecules.
Yeah, that's just that's such propaganda. Like freedom fries. I mean, it's everybody's going to call it French fries. Stop trying to pull the wool over people's eyes. That's a pretty silly tactic. You're part of the way into reading that, Craig, and I mean this is astounding. It's a very hopeful development in that with any here in Virginia, I'm looking at it as like, oh, please set a legal precedent so that it will affect others, the minds that are in charge in other states, to go like, oh, look at this, here's some documented, all the citizens that have been harmed, that the overwhelming evidence of that, and the inaction by state government is incredibly it just points to a level of corruption that is inconceivable. Like, why would they do this? Why would they not do what the government has charged them with doing in protecting the environment, for instance?
Listen to this, Jay. I love things that end in a resounding thud. I'm taking 243 pages I'm going to drop it next to the phone. Listen to this. That's
Yeah.
what 243 pages sound like of resounding thud. And the industry is going to feel this for a long time because we are the golden child, Pennsylvania. We're where everybody in the world is looking at. And when we can pull this off, we're proving to everybody to fight. I don't care how long they've been there in Texas, Oklahoma, Louisiana, North Dakota. Keep fighting. But the citizens give up because they don't feel like they're getting help. So we have to teach them how to use whatever they need to, law enforcement or anything. I mean, Vera, I hope you don't mind, Vera, but Vera is a nearly 70-year-old grandmother of 2 and a mother of 3, and she has caused these guys more indigestion than anybody I've ever seen on this planet. And all she's doing is recording and showing and telling the truth about what she's seeing and what other people are doing. So the truth will set us free, but we have to keep talking. And she's been such a great leader of this. She was doing it before I moved there. She taught me how to do it, how to show people what's going on, how to be real and not say things that are not true. And if you do, you have to correct yourself because they'll look for one misstatement by us to destroy our whole narrative because they've been lying for decades but we're the liars. That's what they do. So I'm proud to know Vera as a friend. Vera's like family now, and Ray, and I didn't know them from Adam 10 years ago, but I will stand with Vera anytime, and I know she will stand with me and have our back, and Ray, anytime we need them when we're trying to fight for the rights of all of our neighbors and family and friends.
Thank you, Craig. Appreciate that. Thank you, Craig. So,
Thank you,
Craig.
That's awesome.
I mean, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I love the sort of sense of community that comes out of this resistance to something that is, horribly wrong with the world, and putting people in danger so that corporations can make money. And I feel that here in Virginia as well with the fight against the pipelines. People have come together who otherwise would never have met socially, but it's really I think galvanizing the fight for the environment. We need to stop these activities, which are short-sighted and ultimately will harm everyone.
Well, the thing is, I want to say, too, I mean, I've dealt with a lot of the DEP people, other agencies. I want to say that they're trying their best. I really don't like to put down the DEP. I feel they have lots of people who are trying to do what they can within the parameters of a very tight, structured environment, and they're trying to do what they can. I mean, they got jobs, they got pensions. They can only do so much, but they have done a good amount to some degree. And I feel they have very tight definitions of what is contamination, very tight parameters of how far the industry can contaminate. And they need to change their definitions and open it up to a much higher degree. So before they say like 2,500 feet, if anything happens between 2,500 feet, the industry is liable. But no, the industry can be liable beyond 2,500 feet. We have horizontals from the wells that go up to 2 miles or more. So that's 10,000 feet or more. So if they're going that far, they should be liable up to 10,000 feet or more. So we have archaic definitions, and that's what they have to work with. And somehow those things have to be changed. And the only way it looks like is through legislation. And legislation is run by all these politicians, and the politicians can be compromised by the contributions to their re-elections. So that makes it
often
difficult.
are, yeah.
So that's the problem, We have to take money somehow out of the equation or have citizens involved who are not being run by money or corporate money to make somehow the regulations so that we have much more. If they went up to 10,000, 15,000 feet of liability, you would have so many much more infractions and violations for contamination. It would be then 4 times, 5 times the amount that we're having right now.
Well, and
So
it would make it unaffordable for them to continue doing what they're doing.
Yes, it would make it unaffordable, and they would have to also make regulations like which I've been begging for years. I said, listen, if you have an industry that has so many violations, you have to kick them out after a certain amount. So what is a good amount? Citizens should be involved. Let's say they have 10 violations. You have 10 violations of contamination, you get kicked out. Or 5 violations. Meanwhile, Cabot has 900 violations, and in those 900 violations, there are a bunch of contamination and administrative, environmental also. It's a mixture. But they have dozens and dozens of contamination. And gag orders. They gag everybody they contaminate. And they give settlements to. That should be also outlawed. If I'm a citizen on a board, no gag orders. You cannot silence the people. And you have to make public wherever the contamination is. I've begged them about that. I said to the DEP, if my neighbor is contaminated up the street, I want to know. I don't want you to start blacking out names. So when we ask for records, I don't know where the addresses are. I can only guess. The names are blacked out. The addresses are blacked out. They give you only the town. So this is all lack of transparency, too much hiding, and the people need to be involved in these boards to be able to show us much better, complete transparency. So that's the problem. We got people who are politicians running the rules and regulations. We got a governor running the rules and regulations. We got the industry involved. So we are not fully protected. We're only partially protected. So when you're partially protected, you're basically not really protected.
Well, yeah. So that's why, I encourage everybody listening, and kind of the name of the show is Citizen Voices, because I want to hear from people like you, but I think it's really incumbent on all of us as citizens to be active, to be watchdogs, because otherwise things like this happen. People are harmed because people leave it up to other people that, have a title, they have a job with the state, they feel secure in that there's somebody that's supposed to be taking care of this. But you've been taking steps to actually inform and educate a lot of people, Vera. You and all 3 of you, along with PK, I think, have been involved with the fracking tours.
Yes. The thing is, when you go out and you put yourself in the front lines, you are at risk. And how many people will put their lives, their businesses, their bank accounts, their reputations, their families at risk? This is a major risk we've taken. I had to lose my family. They had to flee the area. They also were upset with me. Then I had to also go to court, up to 11 times in court for all kinds of charges. Who the hell wants to go through that? It's major stress. I had to endure all kinds of rumors and my reputation sullied and be made fun of and discredited in my community. So most people didn't want to even invite me to things anymore. I had to be basically like an outcast. Who the hell wants to go through that? That's what's involved.
That's traumatic.
We have to make it easier to be an advocate in our communities. We have to promote that. We have to support that in our whole community and not denigrate people who come forward. And that's what happened. And then most of the activists went underground. They were hiding because they did not want to go through what we have gone through.
That's unfortunate. I mean, I think those people who are trying to protect protect everybody else should be held to high esteem and, thanked, not shunned, or hopefully we'll get to that point.
Right.
So,
right. So
I don't know,
that's the problem.
I don't know if Vera saw it. Vera, I don't know if you saw it, but Aaron Brockovich has never. We're looking for a Ralph Nader of this around the country, like Ralph Nader did with all the other things, seatbelts and car crashes and everything else. But Aaron Brockovich retweeted the Josh Shapiro story that said, hang on a second, I'll tell you exactly what it said. She sent out a thing that said, Aaron Brockovich talked about the Cabot case. She said, time for a little ass kicking is what her quote is. And so when Aaron Brockovich starts talking like that, but that's what we haven't had as advocates like that. I was shocked. And by the way, to anybody listening, Vera is not exactly a right-winger. I came from a right-wing Tea Party background. Gray's a registered Republican. But one thing we learned is when we're fighting for our lives and protecting our environment and the future of our children and grandchildren, politics has nothing to do with this. So everyone needs to drop their politics a little bit and be more accepting of people. Because I'll tell you what, Vera's my hero, and we don't see eye to eye on everything politically. But I'll tell you what, on this issue and how she stands up for the community, unbelievable. I mean, like she said, she's been dragged through this much harder than Ray and I have, believe it or not. Much harder, and she's still swinging, and she leading by example. And like I said, there's very few that are still talking where we're from. I don't even live up there anymore, but I have my connections. But Vera and Ray are still in the middle of it, and there are people that just hate them for standing up for the community. So it's unbelievable to watch, but we have to drop the politics, because this has nothing to do with politics, sex, or religion. This is about saving everybody's life on the planet, so we need to stick together on that one.
Yeah, I mean, we're all, there is no planet B, right? This is our planet that we're living on, that we need the air and the water for each individual person. And it's obvious that the people in charge are not thinking things out, like for the next generation, or to borrow the Native American idea, the next 7 generations. What are they going to have to look forward to? A Pennsylvania that is full of sinkholes and leaking methane wells and pipes. That's not very not a future that I would wish on anybody. And
Right, and you don't wish that. And right now we have 55 compressor stations, gas compressor stations, just in our rural community and county. One county, which had nothing, and has over 1,700 holes for gas wells, 55 processing stations, and dozens of new pipelines, high pressure, throughout our county as they industrialize it. And why do we have to endure that? Why would they have to do that to us? And they claim the Russians want to hurt us, or China wants to hurt us. It's our own Americans that are hurting us.
Right. Well, you said 55 compressor stations?
Yes, 55 up to 14, anywhere from 1 to 14 turbines in one station. One station is on 160 acres. We have 2 of them on over 100 acres, and they're spewing out of each turbine all kinds of pollutants, up to a 10 or more pollutants into our rural, once it was pristine air. And that's going out into the air, besides the constant industrial noise.
Right,
it's next to homes. Next to homes, there's no setbacks. No setbacks. They can be within 500 or less feet of homes.
And they run 24/7, don't they?
They run 24/7, unless, of course, there's less gas. Now they got the prices in the toilet, so they're not running as much. But they were running when they had big money and they were high on the hog. They were going 24/7. But now it's less. It might be half of the engines running. It depends.
Well, the Teal compressor station's in a straight line a mile from my house, and it is running full bore every night. Sounds like you got a jet engine sitting in the backyard.
How far away can you hear it?
It's a mile away, and I hear it in my house. I go to bed at night. I either have to have the air conditioner on or the TV on to drown the noise out.
That's noise pollution. That's not good for. God, that's not good for your peace of mind for sure. But
right, noise pollution, light pollution, air pollution, water pollution, traffic pollution, roads destroyed. They have to get rebuilt over and over again. And we gotta wait like a year while they rebuild it, and we have to go through these crappy roads and keep complaining and begging. Please fix the roads. Where's all this money that you mentioned? Where's all these millions and billions? You can't even give us a decent road. We have to wait a year till you fix it after you damage it and break it all up. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable.
Wow. Let me pause here for station identification. You're listening to WRWK 93.9 LPFM in Midlothian, Virginia, serving the greater Richmond metropolitan area and the surrounding counties. And you're listening to our special show on Pennsylvania. We're talking to Vera Scroggins, Craig Stevens, and Ray Kemble.
And Lee.
And Lee, yes. Don't want to forget about Lee.
Hi, Lee.
Hi, Vera.
Yeah, so fortunately, if you haven't been listening, there is positive news coming out of Pennsylvania that the Attorney General, Josh Shapiro, is, with the aid of a 2-year-long grand jury, is bringing criminal charges against Cabot Oil, which is one of many companies operating in Pennsylvania. Fracking, which is a process that releases methane from the shale, but it also has been polluting groundwater terribly and also releasing methane into the air. There's pipelines throughout Pennsylvania carrying this gas that also have leaks and many, many problems. People's property rights have been taken away for the pipelines. They come in to rural areas and put it in these wellheads. With Ray, I know there's one right across the street from your house. That's right. I know that's no fun to have right across the street, especially since you can't drink your water because of it.
They had a drill rig on that property for 2 years, drilling, cranking, banging, clunking, generators running. The lights, there were 7 temporary lights up there. Every one of them was pointed at my house. At 1 o'clock in the morning, you could read a book in my dining room with no lights on in my house whatsoever.
That's
and this
horrible.
went on for 2 years.
Yeah, that's. It sounds like they're trying to make you move.
Well, they're trying to intimidate me and shut me up. Well, guess what? You picked the wrong son of a bitch to do it with.
Yes.
Jay, let me tell you something. We got so bad. Near my house, there was a compressor station put in Snake Creek, which is by Vera and my house up there. And Vera went over, and she ended up having to go buy a noise meter, a dB meter, to test the noise because nobody had one. Now, we do have a 55 decibel maximum during certain hours, and that the county put in law. It's a law.
Yeah.
It's a law. And so Vera goes and buys the meter, and definitely the station operating fully was violating the law. So she and I both went to the county commissioners meeting, and she brought it up. Not only don't they have anybody to effectively enforce that law, they don't even own a dB meter. So why even put it in there to have a 55 decibel maximum when nobody even owns one? So Vera and I pushed as hard as we could to say, hey, you got it in the law in the books. You need to enforce it. No, they're not. Who would we enforce? How would they do it? No, they refuse to even enforce their own laws that are in place to keep this kind of noise pollution down. We have all kinds of rules. They're like on certain times you can't burn things because there's a burn ban because it's dry or there's other conditions or whatever. But these guys can start a compressor station, build it next to your house, fire it up, and have noise coming through your walls and your windows and everything so high and it violates the laws of Susquehanna County, the 55 decibel rule law, and they can ignore it because nobody's going to enforce it. It's just sickening to watch.
It is.
So you know what we have to do? That's a good point. We have to bring that to the new hotline that we have with the AG and tell them how they're not enforcing. They don't even have a noise meter. They're not willing to invest in it, even though they get millions in Act 13 royalty money every year. They can't even invest in a noise meter so that they can check the complaints of the citizens, besides also investing in air quality issues. And so that when we complain about the air quality, the noise quality, they should be out there paying for some of that from our millions that they get every year from the royalties. So what do? They don't spend it on gas impacts or the gas company impact. They spend it on everything else but. And when we ask them for money for water, that's another complaint to the AG. We got to let them know. They don't ever help people with water. They don't even buy bottled water to help people who are in need when we beg them at the county commissioners meetings. So this all has to go to the AG hotline.
Well, I mean, it'd be nice if that, now that they've opened Pandora's box with this legal action, that DEP would get their act together and actually enforce what they're supposed to be doing.
They won't until people get dragged out of that building in handcuffs is when they're going to do it, the leadership people. But you're right, Vera. I mean, we're going to point out everything that they're refusing to oversee any of this.
Right.
The counties are. And the townships, I think, are even worse, Vera. They really, I mean, when the water delivery stopped in November 30th of 2011, the Governor Corbett, our newly elected, within 10 months, Republican governor of Pennsylvania, he let them stop the water deliveries. So we basically scrambled, and I was able to get a water hydrant installed in town. And when we installed it at a private property, that was more like about March of the following year, 2012, we were immediately slapped with violation notices to the property owner, zoning violation, $500 a day fines. And they called us water pirates, endemic water pirates. So we're trying to steal the water from them. And it's a public supply. And the people that installed the pipeline were the people that are the public entity with public water, which is Pennsylvania American Water. So they're trying to say we're stealing water, but it was engineered. They looked at it. We had plenty of water. They installed the hydrant, but we're being called the endemic water pirates. So that's what we get. Even when we give a solution, short-term solution, we get attacked. I mean, Ray was physically assaulted at the hydrant going to get water before. We could not believe what we were seeing. And the community, the Montrose Borough Council, they put us on their agenda because they said too many negative calls about the hydrant being there. Oh, you mean the ones where we had to call you because people were physically assaulting the driver that was getting the water or parking in front of our hydrant? So they twist it around. They say that the putting that was in there was troublesome to the community, and guess what happened? Nothing. Uh-oh.
Yeah, I think we lost Vera.
That's all right. Lee wants to say something.
Go for it, Lee.
Yeah, well, when all this stuff hits the fan, as far as the DEP goes, and when they have to go to the industry to get the answers, we witnessed that yesterday when that little DEP guy was at that pad, and he didn't even know what he was looking at or looking for, right? So, and when they have to go to the industry and ask, that's the bad thing, because they should know their job, inside out. And since they don't come from the oil field, they really don't have a clue what's going on. So, so they should actually hire some third party or something, because it's way out of hand like that.
So
that's what I wanted to weigh in on, just the educational part there, that them guys aren't educated
And they're sticking the
And he even opened a lid that's toxic and stuck his head in there.
Oh. Yeah.
And
that's poor training.
Yeah.
He has no idea what he's doing.
It's like seeing a green hand walk up to an oil field in the same day, you know. It's like you can tell they never seen it before in their life. And I guess a new person on the job.
Yeah,
no
well,
matter what you're doing, you can. If you've been there for a long time, you can see them. You can spot them out. And through the records that I reviewed, that's exactly what DEP did. Was they went to the corporation that was contaminating people and asked them, well, what are you going? What's going to do? You know, how do we face this? You know. So they'll make a long, drawn-out process, and sometimes they can't even be recovered. You know, the solution is to stop immediately.
He stated that he had 3 violations he was going to write up. He said it will go to them. He goes, it'll come back to DEP with word changing on it, and then DEP just won't do anything with it and just lays there. So he does violations, but it'll never go anywhere.
So I'm looking at Ray's well across the street for the first time. I actually get a close-up look at it. Got a piece of 8 5/8 that's hanging out, and it's got a couple of lines. It's got a bolt plug on one side, and it's got a 2-inch line coming out. So this is a vertical well, and so it looks like the barefooting practice was created there. And so what I mean by the barefoot practice, the lines, they got a little conductor pipe, maybe 20 feet, and then your 8 5 is maybe 40 feet, and then 6 5/8, and that'll go down. It isn't even probably 100 feet past that, and then they continue to drill, and then they came out and they hydraulic fractured, and when they hydraulic fractured, they didn't go through any casing or nothing. So that's an old practice of a long time ago, where they could just stick pipes in a hole and then, use the perforate them, and then gas would come out the outside. And now they're doing a new technique in hydraulic fracturing. That's where the main event took place about that well, just by looking at it up close.
Thanks for explaining that. I just got a message from Vera that her phone died. So thank you so much for being on the show, Vera. That was really great to talk to her. And now with you guys, we'll wind up in a few minutes. But so there's going to be you guys are going to show up in court to watch the proceedings on July 21st.
You can't, Jay. I talked to the sheriff. There's only 10 total chairs, and that has to count for the lawyers on both sides, and they have to let the press in before they let any of the public in. There's 10 seats in that courtroom. So it is not going to be. We're going to be outside July 21st. That's a Tuesday. 10 a.m. is when they have to show up, and we don't really care if they show up or not. If they postpone or to do something before that, we want to do an event where we stand with the citizens. So that's what we're doing. And if you guys are listening and you want to come and see what's going on, come and see a win. This is a win. This is the biggest win we've seen in the United States right now on this issue. So feel free to come up and join us. Anybody that wants to, we'd love to have you. We've got some potential high-level people that everyone will enjoy coming if we can get them to lock it in. But other than that, it'll be Vera and Ray and Craig and others that have stood up against these guys for a dozen-plus years. And we're going to have our friends come from the Mariner East, hopefully, and southwestern PA and other areas in the Commonwealth and other states that are going to come and stand with everybody. So, yeah, it's ridiculous. Our courthouse, this is preliminary hearing. It'll probably get bumped up to the main courtroom. But even then, with all the COVID going on, we'll social distance out in the park across the street, and it's massive park. a massive park, and we'll have plenty of room for everyone to come and share our pleasure about what they've done and our displeasure about how long it took to get this going.
Yeah, for sure. Do you know if there'll be like anything like a live feed from the courtroom?
No. They don't have cameras in the courtroom. They're not allowed. No, you can't even take your cell phone in. You have to check it in the box at the front. So, no, it doesn't matter. We'll find out because we'll find out when they come out. It'll be public record then. But our thing is they're going to have to. Cabot's lawyers are going to have to do a perp walk because they used to be in the courtroom up at the jail, which is up the hill. You really had to be right up there. But now they moved those courtrooms into the new courthouse. By the way, that courthouse, that Montrose courthouse at the county seat, was remodeled with what was called impact fees. They put in new computers. They painted the building and remodeled and built it, new stuff. None of that money was spent on contaminated victims of contaminated water or people that had health problems. It was all spent on improving their building. And I think they've taken $100 million in Susquehanna County. $100 million has come in 7 or 8 years from the impact fee, but they don't have any money to spend on us,
on the citizens,
the victims. And
yeah,
and it's called an impact fee. They weren't impacted; they were really positively impacted with the money, the county. But the citizens were so negatively impacted that we could have used that $100 million to try to help people move out or get water or do something, build a water line or something.
Yeah, I mean that's hopefully people will start to think like you, Craig. That'd be nice to do what's best for the taxpayers, for the citizens of the state, who are they don't have a choice on, what's happening to them apparently at this point, even though they are citizens, because the government is beholden to corporate interests, because of the way our politics is set up. It's got to change, and I hope I'm really hoping that these criminal charges will force a change for the better.
And just remember, Jay, I'm still in this lawsuit.
Right. So Ray is in a lawsuit. They're suing you for $5 million for defamation of character. Is that right?
Defamation of character, slander, and breaking the gag order.
Which they actually invalidated, right, by their actions.
Right.
And when is that? When will that happen?
From what I was told, the next time anybody's going to be in court is going to be in September.
Well,
it's been going on for 3 years already. Over 3 years now, they've been dragging right through the court system.
Right. Well,
in preliminary still.
Yeah. So September. We'll see what happens with the whole epidemic. That I know that's been affecting courts a lot.
Yep.
And with any, how do you see these criminal charges affecting your case?
Well, I don't see how they can turn around and fight the AG and also go after me. And then it just came out in a report where their own investors, stockholders, and everything else are now getting law firms, and they're suing them for fraud.
Oh.
Three different law firms with thousands of investors are suing Cabot, Jay.
For fraud.
For fraud. Well, hopefully that'll scare off investors from other pipelines. It's looking worse and worse.
The house of cards is falling down.
The house of cards is falling down. Yeah. Well, I think we're at a good dropping off point here. Thank you guys so much for being on, and I definitely I will be glued to the news, and I'd like to be able to make it up there myself. I haven't worked that out yet for that court date, but
well, Come on up, not to be missed event. It's going to be.
It should be
outstanding.
It should be a landmark event, by all means.
Jay, come up and see what winners look like. And stand on their own ground. We don't have to run away. We're not running away from the community. We're standing in the middle of it, and we're waving the flag of victory. So nobody's used to seeing that. We're not on fracking. We're not used to seeing it. So come on up, man.
Okay, great. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Jay.
Thanks, Jay.
Take care. Bye. All right. That winds up our Citizen Voices radio show for June 23rd, 2020. We'll be back next week, July 5th, day after 4th of July, of course, and that should be an interesting event here with I've never had a 4th of July during a pandemic. That day is also lunar eclipse, which should be hopefully clear skies to see that at night. All right. You're listening to WRWK 93.9 FM. Thank you guys so much for tuning in today. I will now return you to our Pacifica radio feed.
Incredible fear of returning to your country. And that's a very big law case for a lawyer to get involved in and make out, which you do see in the film. And what then happens is they hire or ask people to come and testify as country conditions experts. And that's something that I do. So I testify in the United States courts and globally as a country conditions expert for several African countries, where I go and I explain to a judge why this person has a credible fear.
Now, Cheyenne, you describe an incident in which Mara's mother tried to poison the two of you because you were living together in a romantic relationship?
Yes, that in fact happened, but I prefer not to.
Well,
not
just
to
let me do
with this question. I'm sorry about that.
Just let me do one follow-up,
yeah.
which is not the personal side.
Yeah.
If she had succeeded in killing you, would she have been arrested, or would her actions have been seen as justified according to the laws of Angola at the time?
That is definitely a good question. Thank you for that. Well, at that time, I believe that she would probably go, not be really, how do you say in English? Not be condemned for her actions, because she probably saved the society from having another lesbians or gay people. So I believe she would be, let's say, okay at that time.
Tom, your film also shows several volunteer hosts and sponsors who work with the refugees when they arrive, putting them up in their homes or helping them find other accommodations. Is that an organized effort? Are there religious groups that are working with LGBT refugees?
Yeah, that infrastructure was just starting to build up when we started filming in late 2014, and it sort of points to one of the kind of heartbreaking issues in this story, Leonard, which is, that most of the refugee resettlement model in this country, going back decades and decades, and there is a rich history of that in this country, but it's always been sort of predicated on families, right? So a family might flee a war-torn zone of Syria or Iraq, and if they come to the Bay Area, where Melanie and I live, now they'll often connect with one of these refugee resettlement groups like Jewish Family and Community Services, and then they'll kind of connect to maybe it's a grocery store in the community or a mosque or a community center. I mean, it's definitely not easy, but there are these sort of footholds into the community based on the kind of diaspora of your family. LGBTQ refugees are not fleeing with their families in most cases. They're fleeing from their family. Mm-hmm. And so if you're a gay Iraqi guy and you get to San Francisco, quite possibly the last people that you want to see are other Iraqis, because you fear that, the same sort of harassment and vitriol that you experienced back in Iraq. So, what we found is that LGBTQ refugees and asylum seekers are really at higher risk for isolation, for depression, for kind of more internal displacement when they get here. And so then the question is, who's going to step forward? And folks like Melanie and the Unitarians and the Jewish Family and Community Services were trying to sort of fill that gap through volunteerism. And you kind of see that grow over time, the sad irony is that in 2016, when Donald Trump won the presidency, even though these kind of infrastructures had matured, he cut the number of refugees allowed into the country down to a trickle. So now the resources are there, but we don't see the refugees.
And now the Supreme Court has allowed him to cut it even more. So that's going to be, I guess, the subject of your second film on this subject. Now Cheyenne, you said that you weren't allowed to work for the first 6 months when you arrived. Is that one of the requirements for asylum? And how do you survive if you can't work?
Good question. That's one of the requirements. That you're not allowed to work. So we. I
imagine some people work illegally.
Right. We had to work under the table. That's what was happening, and it was definitely like a very concerning thing that we were doing, because if we got caught, we would like have the risk of being deported, right? But again, I think people don't realize, okay, you're going to stay like 6 months without working. How are you going to sustain yourself? How are you going to eat? So we had to do something. And we are kind of, Marty and I, we're the type of woman that we don't like to depend on anyone. And we like to have our own money. So we had to do something to put like food on our table and all of that. And again, we did have help like from people that we met. And that's how we survived for all those months.
Even though the city is welcoming to LGBTQ people, was there still a sense of culture shock? Or do you think that it was easier for you because you had each other? Might it be more difficult for people who come alone?
Culture shock, I think we had more when, like the way Americans actually treat each other. There's not really a sense of community. Let's say like in the LGBT community, right? You would have think that that's where we would feel more safe and we would have more support, but it was totally the contrary. Like we actually suffered like racism and xenophobia in the LGBT community. So that was really something that kind of made us like look at each other and like, oh, okay, so this is how things work here. And being in San Francisco, which is like, it should